My name is Jennifer Webb, and I am very happy to be the Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid here at Flint Hill. And we're so glad you're here tonight for this event to learn more about the middle school. A little bit more about the event, you're going to hear from our Assistant Head, Meredith Van Dyne, who is going to tell you all about who Flint Hill is. You're going to hear from the Middle School Division Director, Brian Lamont, who's going to share our approach to middle school at Flint Hill. And then we have some of our middle school parents and students who are really eager to share their experiences at Flint Hill Middle School with you and are also here to answer your questions. At the end of the event, I will come back on and tell you more about next steps and learning more about Flint Hill and also the admission process. In terms of the format tonight, we're all used to being muted on these things, but that doesn't mean we don't want you to engage. We very much want to hear your questions. We want to hear your comments. So we hope that you won't be shy about using the chat feature to send in questions and comments throughout the event today. And we will answer some of them verbally. We have middle school admission officer Jordy Izzard here with us tonight, who will be helping us moderate the chat, both by typing back answers and bringing questions to our attention. So please do use that function. And without further ado, I am going to turn it over to one of the most impactful leaders I've worked with, Meredith Van Dyne, who is our Assistant Head for Institutional Advancement. Meredith?
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone. Thanks all for joining us tonight. We're delighted you're with us. So you might not know that our mascot is a husky named Klondike, and we use the Iditarod dog sled race as a metaphor for our educational journey and life's journey, with the idea that some days that journey is beautiful and breathtaking, and other days the road is bumpy with patches of slippery ice. The beauty is that at Flint Hill, we're all part of a team, and no one person on the sled is more important than anyone else, and we're all pulling the sled together. As a Husky, we use the idea of blazing your trail to articulate that we support each student to find their own unique path, both here at school and as graduates making a difference in the world. As parents of upcoming middle schoolers, we respect that you are looking for the right school, perhaps not only for next year, but also for high school too. You're playing for the long game in your child's lives, just as we play for the long game for all of our students at Flint Hill. So my role tonight is to share a few of the parts of the Flint Hill experience that are through lines or aspects of the experience that you can expect throughout your time at Flint Hill. We're innately curious at Flint Hill. If you don't know this already, you'll know this by the end of this program tonight. We find we get more interesting answers because of the questions we're willing to ask ourselves. We wonder, what will inspire our students and engage them in their learning? We know the learning is relevant and dynamic, but how do we make sure it's personal and meaningful? We take this idea of being curious and innovating very seriously. It's one of the ways we teach. It's active, it's participatory in a way that at times, sometimes doesn't even feel like school. When my daughter was in middle school here at Flint Hill not that long ago, she came home one night talking about a project in her honors math class, where they were exploring how to fund the first semester of college. Now, please let me assure you that even though 100% of our students pursue a college education, not to worry, we don't actually push our middle schoolers to worry about college. There's time for that later. But that wasn't the point of the exercise. Instead, it was a project that required research skills, complex calculations, and managing interpersonal group dynamics, all with real-world applications. I marveled at how many concepts her teacher wove into one project and how engaged the students were in solving the problem. So our approach is active and engaging. Another through line has to do with relationships and how we learn, work, and play together. Our core values guide our interactions and all we do at Flint Hill. As you read our core values, I'm sure you've noticed they're very action-oriented. So let's look at those for just a moment. The idea of respecting and valuing everyone equally, that goes to the heart of who we are and how we treat other people. We honor each person and the uniqueness they bring to our school community. We want every student, every family, to bring their full selves to school. But to do that, students must feel safe and loved, knowing there are adults who will support them in who they are. So sure, there are traditional and frankly easy ways to assess if our middle school community is diverse. For example, 50% are girls, 50% are boys. We have families with 1 to 5 children enrolled. Our students come from 30 communities across the region. 36% are students of color. 70% of our students have parents who did not attend private school as a child. And we're proud to have a learning center that supports a range of learning styles. And while these are all great indicators that our community genuinely values and attracts difference, the heart of this value is how we treat each other on an individual level. Next is the idea of leading and supporting with compassion. If you follow us on social media, and if you don't, if on the side while your cameras are off, you should sneak away and make sure you follow us on all those because there's a lot of great information. But if you follow us on social media or watch local news, you may have seen the coverage of our middle school makers class. They partnered with Magic Wheelchair, which is a local nonprofit, to create a Halloween costume for a local student named Nathan who is in a wheelchair. Because Nathan is a huge Nationals fan, they created a costume which turned his wheelchair into the famous bullpen cart. Our students traveled to Nats Park, where they and the Nats surprised Nathan with his costume. Our makers teacher, Chris Cook, summed it up really well when he said, "I absolutely love making and building things with a purpose, while showing students how empathy and kindness are such valuable traits in a person." That idea of acting with integrity is at the heart of raising kids. So even though we're 3 divisions, the lower school, the middle school, the upper school, we're one Flint Hill. In this past December, the entire school did a massive food drive to help local organization Food for Others. Every grade participated, JK through 12, and they donated over 13,000 items. In the upper school, they added an extra layer of fun because sometimes high schoolers are a little extra, and because sometimes Huskies are a little competitive. They turned it into a contest to see which grade could donate the most food. Students self-reported their contributions and the winning group was announced. However, the winning group realized something was wrong with the number they were credited with donating. They dug deeper and realized instead of reporting a total for each of 5 days, they were entering cumulative totals every day, making their total much larger than it should have been. On their own, those students immediately shared their mistake, saying it wouldn't be right if we got credit for something we didn't do, and we don't want the real winners to go unrecognized. As parents, as educators, we all know our students won't be perfect, but we want them to know the right thing to do and to do it. And so much of that foundation is laid in middle school. Imagining what's possible means we're always looking to the future. You will not hear people at Flint Hill say that's the way it's always been done. Whether it's being the first Apple Distinguished School in the region or opening our cutting-edge middle school building last year, we relish the chance to leverage good questions into great opportunities for our students. Our middle school is a time when students can explore a wide range of interests and try new activities and sports, all with a strong scaffolding of support in place. Our seniors are going off to great universities because they're blazing the trail. As Brian will tell you more about in just a moment, our middle school prepares students for upper school. You'll see it all come to fruition there with a very strong academic program, incredible arts program, expert college counseling team, competitive athletics, and above all, a true sense of purpose. Thank you all for your kind attention. We're delighted you're exploring our middle school, but I wanted you to know that this is something bigger than one division. It's part of something greater than ourselves, but very much a part of our school family, which we would love to welcome you into. Middle school is a special time, and at Flint Hill, it's a special experience. Without further ado, to learn more about the middle school, I'm going to turn it over to my inimitable colleague, Director of the Middle School, Brian Lamont.
Thank you, Meredith. And thanks for giving us such a great overview school-wide. And I'd like to take a few minutes and focus on the middle school experience, and then we'll have a chance to meet and connect with some current and unpaid students and parents. So give me a second to... Okay. Excellent. So I'm Brian Lamont, as Meredith said. This is about year 8 for me as director of the middle school. I've been fortunate to be at Flint Hill for over 20 and in various capacities as a teacher, coach, director of the upper school, one of my most important and frustrating roles as a parent of Flint Hill students. I have my youngest is hopefully graduating this spring, which has afforded me a really effective lens that kind of helps guide the work we do in middle school, having seen the way that our school can work for my three very different kids, but also really thinking about, with knowledge of our upper school program and where students need to get to, what do we need to be doing at this level to ensure that they're prepared. And one of our most important roles is to prepare our young adolescents in this critically important and sometimes volatile period of life for the next steps in their journey. And we understand that we have a responsibility to teach everything at the middle school level, and that how they need it is very unique and different at these age groups. And one important piece is preparing them for our upper school program. As Meredith touched on, there's some really wonderful aspects of being part of a JK-12 school. And one of the things we need to do well is to prepare our students for a smooth transition into our upper school in all ways. There's a really important element of academic training that has to happen between lower school and upper school. So our students coming out of our program are well prepared for upper school in terms of their academic skills. Again, a benefit of attending an upper school at the same school that there's for middle schools, that the course progressions flow in a way that makes sense and has oversight from department chairs who oversee from 7 through 12. A big part of what our students need to, and what our focus is helping our students understand themselves as learners, so that when they do get to upper school, when they do get to higher level and kind of arguably more important kind of coursework, then that they have a better understanding of what works for them and what doesn't. Certainly, as Meredith touched on, in terms of school culture and core values, which flows from JK through 12, how we use technology and how our upper school teachers and program use technology in the classroom and out. And a lot of that starts, as Meredith touched on, for us as an Apple Distinguished School, and how we leverage technology for learning here in middle school. Our students are prepared in terms of our sense of curiosity and innovative teaching and thinking, as well as for parents, as being part of being part of school culture and kind of learning how things work in our middle school, not only program, but also in our parent body, and how that flows into our upper school. So again, an important responsibility for me and for us is to prepare all of our students for our upper school experience, which is one of the best in the country. And one of our most important responsibilities is recognizing that these kids are not upper schoolers. And this is an incredibly rich and emotional period of life that is unlike any other. Certainly all of us, even when you're as old as I am, it's important that people know and care about you, but never is there a period of life where it's more important that the adults working with your children connect with them in a way that conveys that we know them, accept them, and care about them. Another way in which we meet the unique needs of young adolescents is with our innovative and reflective teaching that really focuses on how, not on our content and what do our kids need to know, but how do they learn best? As I mentioned, leveraging technology where it makes sense to. And that our curriculum is intentional, that it's thoughtful, and every decision every day has meaning and purpose into where our kids need to be going. That's in terms of the academic offerings and the kind of academic work that they're doing every day to kind of stretch them on their path. All of the bucket of personal and social skills connected to our core values and all of things human needs. As I sort of half jokingly say, that our goal in middle school is to help your child move out of your house by the time that they're 30. I didn't know they would also figure out how to pay for the first semester of college, but I guess that's also a perk. at least for Meredith. And, again, very thoughtful and intentional in terms of the DEI work that we do here in our middle school program that also flows into other aspects of the school. In terms of our adults and students connecting in really impactful ways, some of that's done by size. And so our each grade level is roughly 90 to 100 students. We maintain a very low student-teacher ratio, as well as small class sizes, which allows every child to be seen and known, and in a sense, certainly that no one's falling through the cracks. I would say that the foundation of our middle school program is the advisory program. So we do follow a developmental designs program. All of our advisors, all of our teachers are trained. We start every morning with a 20-minute advisory period that really paves the way for their academic learning. Where, as you can maybe see in that picture, that they start, all the students and the advisor are circled up. They start every day with a greeting, with an activity, with a sharing, with a game, and it's implemented in the same way across every advisory from 7:50 until 8:10 in the morning. And again, all that is designed to help create a sense of belonging and inclusivity, helping students to connect with others, to work on their social skills, and to engage with their learning. In terms of innovative teaching, so again, we attract and retain the very, very small percentage of the population who absolutely love middle school age kids and are great at what they do. So we have an incredible team of adults working with our middle school kids here, again, who are designing activities that are active and engaging. We're currently 2-to-1 with Apple products in our middle school. Every student has an iPad and a MacBook. We've been piloting a 2-to-1 environment for a few years. We are shifting to a MacBook only next year. So we've been kind of examining what works best for our program and our students over the past few years. And again, we're not using technology for technology's sake. We're using it as a tool for teaching and learning. And there are many class activities that you'll see when hopefully your child comes to do a shadow visit. You'll see the MacBook and or iPad being used, and many times in which they aren't. So we're going to close our devices and have a discussion, or someone's going to present. We're going to listen to each other. We're going to read from our hard copy book. So again, leveraging technology where it makes sense and where it has purpose, which is also true with the courses we offer. And as Meredith has touched on, we do offer our wide range. It's really a period of life where we want students to feel free to explore interests, to challenge themselves differently. We do offer honors level classes in English, math, and language. And when we get to that point, you'll find that when we're discussing courses, and it's really a conversation between me and families as we get started. It's not about allowing students to take honors classes or not. It's about what makes sense and what do you want to try. And generally, again, we want students to be stretching themselves and figuring out what works for them, what they enjoy. All of our students take English, math, language, science, history, and a fine art. Students have a choice of several strands of fine arts. So we have visual art, we have theater arts, and music. We have 4 different music groups: band, chorus, orchestra, and percussion. And our students can elect to take another range of classes. So again, we have a lot of kind of part-time and full-time classes to help students experience different options, from makers, which Meredith had touched on, which is that special project with Magic Wheelchair. We offer electives in robotics and math counts and broadcasting and Kurtaman, creative writing, and on and on. So our students can take one elective and kind of focus on that during both 7th and 8th grade, or they can take as many as 8 if they mix and match part-time classes. So again, really important at this level for students to be exploring and trying things on, where while there is kind of a step up in academic workload from lower schools, it needs to be a time where there's more academic training and some more homework load, but it's very moderate so that students can take on extra classes without workload being a concern. And a lot of our focus, both in the classroom and out, is about other aspects of academic skills in terms of time management and study skills. Again, figuring out what works for me and what doesn't. Students and parents have access to an open grade book, which is pretty similar across many schools, but it is similar in our middle and upper, where at any given time, students and parents can see what's in the grade book. And you'll receive a lot of coaching from me and kind of hear me say about 1,000 times, grades are not the point in middle school. It's about the journey. It's about the stumbles. It's about the ups and downs, it's about how students learning to be independent, and parents learning to play that very difficult parent role of wanting to give your child space to be independent when they're not very good at it yet, and understanding how to be hands off to a point and where that point is and how to ask the right questions without annoying them. And some days you're going to annoy them no matter what you do. That's part of the beauty of this period of life, where all of us as parents can be super annoying. Outside of the classroom, the curriculum includes wellness and community service. So in terms of wellness, we do programming and work with our students around mental health, substances, and sexuality. We do advisory and community building, and some of our wellness programming takes place during our advisory lessons. Community service is an aspect, and field studies actually, which are two aspects that have been we've had to reimagine over the past couple of years, because we, like most schools, have not been able to do the same kind of field trips and large group activities and buses and things. But typically we have students off campus for days of service and do an overnight trip, kind of an outdoor education where we contract with an outside group. And all of our 8th graders do a capstone presentation that they start working on at the start of their 8th grade year. And it's if you think like a TEDx style, and it's very much of a range. So our focus with students is on their message about conveying something that's personal or important to them, and there's no right or wrong answer to that. And then learning presentation and public speaking skills, and putting that together over time. And then again, depending on how things play out here, we would typically want our students to do that presentation in front of the entire middle school. That's how we've done it in the past. And again, we've had to modify it to do more video presentations here in the past couple of years. And then one important aspect of our middle school is our athletic program, which we were not able to run the same way last year. This year, we were thrilled to bring it back. And again, we have some of our students are very athletic, and that's one of the most important parts of their day. And some of our students have never done youth sports, and we have levels for all of them. So I will say within my family, I have one who is very athletic and very interested in it, and two who had never touched the ball until they got into 7th grade, and I was worried about how it was going to go. Our athletics is an extension of our school day and actually fits within our school day. And most of our sports teams do compete against other similar schools. So our practices are done by 3:30. Our teams are coached by our teachers, and we typically have levels. And I will say it's an aspect both in terms of team building, in terms of learning skills, and just a social activity with their peers that our students just love, and is a really important part of our day. Okay, so that gives you kind of an overview of our middle school program overall. And they're certainly happy to answer questions or touch on other details. And that's, why we have some of our guests here today too. And I'm going to, in this next phase, when I'm going to have the students introduce themselves and maybe how long they've been at Flint Hill, and something you like about it. So you can prepare for that while I kind of prep this. So we'll hear an intro from our students as they introduce themselves, and then you'll have a chance to ask questions in the chat. And And then we'll do the same with our parents who are taking time out of their evening to join us today as well. And I will tell you there are times in the past where we tried to really coach and script how these went, especially with our student questions. And I've learned over the years it's best not to try, A, because it doesn't work, and B, because our kids do a really wonderful job being genuine and speaking off the cuff. So I've learned it's much better not to get in their way. That's one of my main goals here in middle school in my job. So at this point, we've got Alok, Thomas, and Kathleen are here on their evening, getting to spend more time with school, which they love. So again, if you want to introduce yourself, how long have you been here? Maybe one thing you enjoy. It could be a class. It could be an aspect of the school. You shouldn't all say me, but it would be a little embarrassing. So that I'll won't put any pressure on you there. Alok, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I can start. Hi, I'm Alok. I came in 6th grade, and my favorite part about the day is athletics.
Okay. Alok does take some classes also, but yes, as I mentioned, athletics is a really important part of our program. Regardless of whether our teams are good or if someone's particularly good in a sport or not. That's definitely not the point. Kathleen?
Hi, I'm Kathleen. This is my first year at Flint Hill, and my favorite part of it is probably either history class or athletics.
Excellent, thank you. Thomas?
Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas. I came in 7th grade, and my favorite part of the week would probably be math and science.
Excellent. So, prospective families, we have access to 3 of our wonderful middle school students, and thinking, I think one of the challenging things when you're sitting in your seat is thinking, how is my kid going to fit? What was the transition like? And so, any questions for our students that you want to add into the chat? And otherwise, I will just start peppering them with things. Well, I will start while I wait for some questions to come in. So maybe if you could each say something about the, you don't necessarily need to name the school you transition from. Maybe if you're transitioning from another independent school or public school, and what did the transition feel like to you in terms of maybe academic load and from a social standpoint?
I can start. Before I came to Flint Hill, I went to a small private school, and the transition going from a small school to a big school, it was definitely different, but I felt like I fit in with everyone else, and everyone else was included me and all the other kids that were new that year into their friend groups, and playing football at break or hanging out at lunch, or even hanging out in general.
Yeah.
I can go next.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. So I came from public school. I had gone to 2 other public schools before. And the transition was really nice. It was super easy to get. I felt welcomed, and everybody was, just super nice. And the classes were, I wouldn't say harder than I expected, but they were different because I had been used to classes of a larger size. So it was a little harder to get into the school academically, I thought, for me, but it was after I got through the first quarter, which I thought was the hardest part, it became really easy.
For me, I came from a very large public middle school, and I thought the transition was going to be really hard. I would have to stay up till 3 doing homework. I wouldn't understand any of the classes. But actually, The homework load's pretty good, and I found a really great group of friends. And the classes are understandable.
And you go to bed before 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
Nice. Okay. Many hours before 3. Thank you. There's a question about student turnover and how many new students coming in. So we do 7th grade is, and we have a number of kind of main entry points in our school. So in our lower school, we have 2 sections up through 4th grade, and then we typically have add a section of students in 5th grade. So 5th and 6th grade have 3 sections. 7th grade is a big entry point for us. So we have we expect, well, I mean, in our coming in this next year, Jennifer, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember I mean, we typically get, well, we expect at least 30 coming in new to 7th grade. 8th grade kind of varies, and it depends on how large the class is in a given year. We could have as many as I mean, for this coming year, we expect double digits, but some years we've had 20 or more. Jennifer, do you want to add anything else about the numbers I botched?
No, I think you got it, Brian. So we don't tend to have a lot of student turnover, but as Brian mentioned, from 6th to 7th, the class size does increase quite a bit. And so we'll go up to 100 students in the grade, and it can be about half and half coming from our lower school, 6th grade, and coming in new. And then we do tend to have less at 8th grade because we tend to have less space, a lot less space in 8th grade, and it tends to be a little more competitive.
Yeah. And there was a question about were we open last year? And so, as Meredith touched on at the beginning, so our middle school building opened last year. It was brand new last year, and we were open in person 5 days a week. I think we were virtual for 3 weeks during the whole year, but otherwise, middle school went strong. And so, yeah, as you heard, Alok started in 6th grade before this building opened. Thomas was new last year, so transitioning to a brand new building, brand new school, and in the middle of the pandemic, and Kathleen coming in this year to 7th grade, and still in the pandemic. So yes, we have been open, and that's as much as I think we were very successful with that really rough spring in March of 2020 with virtual learning. Our strong preference and priority is being open in person, as it generally is for parents also. So maybe I'll give, a couple more questions here that maybe, and you don't all have to answer all of them, but there's a question here about which aspect was harder for you during this. Well, maybe starting with what made you transition here in 7th grade. I guess Alok for you was 6th grade, but what was the reason you came to Flint Hill? There's also a question about how does the teaching different than what you experienced previously? What do you notice differently in the classroom? So maybe start with those two. So what brought you here? Why did you choose Flint Hill? And what do you notice as different? How does the instruction differ from your previous school?
So I came last year mostly because of COVID, because I wanted to go in person to be educated, because I didn't really feel like Fairfax County was doing that when we were virtual. And then what was the next one?
How does teaching look and feel
right,
in
yeah.
the classroom?
There's a lot more personal instruction at Flint Hill than I found there was at my older school. So if you have a question, it gets answered a lot faster, and there's typically more in-depth detail that I was getting. it was just a lot more concise because obviously the classes are smaller, so you can get a much better response at a much more timely manner.
My primary reason to come was I came from a school with like about 30 kids per grade, and I just wanted to come to a bigger school because I wanted to socialize with more people, and the it was the I think the teaching was relatively the same because it was a private school before. It At my old school, the teachers weren't as attentive as they are at Flint Hill. So that's also a reason why when I shadowed, I really enjoyed the teachers being attentive and listening to all the students.
For me, I transitioned mostly because of COVID, but also because in my public school, it was like so big that there wasn't a lot of like one-on-one time, and the teachers weren't really able to focus on each individual student and how they were able to learn. Um, so that's why we transitioned. And at Flint Hill, I find that the teachers are able to focus on everybody more individually. So you can learn, I guess, like you can learn at your own speed and still like you. I'm sorry, I'm like not really sure how to word
No, it
this.
sounds like
Yeah.
your individual needs are met, and that might
Yeah,
be different for different kids in the classroom.
yeah, like every teacher can meet your individual needs, and you won't be left behind.
There's a question about
Sorry.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's all the time for extra help. We have like almost 2 hours of time where we can meet with teachers to talk with them. And I mean, as long as you schedule something with them before, you can always talk with them. And there's typically a lot of time where they aren't really, well, I'm sure they're doing things, but they're still willing to drop what they're doing to meet with you to make sure that you're getting what you need.
Yes, when Thomas needs help, I instruct everyone to, you drop whatever you're doing. I don't care if it's a sandwich, whatever it is. No, we're actually that segues well, because there was a question about the flow of the day, in terms of, and I'll chime in on this also, but a question about your free time and breaks during the day. Maybe you can touch on how do you experience the daily schedule in terms of balance between class time with a chance to have breaks and socialize, get outside, those kind of things.
So during the day, we get a decent amount of breaks. We have a break in the morning for 15 minutes, and then we have a 45-minute lunch break. And so during that, in the beginning of the year, we had lunch, and then we had like a little bit of a recess time. But now we have it's called ASH, Advisory Study Hall. So we have that for about 20 minutes after lunch. And then we also have the flex period, which we can either spend doing homework or I guess whatever we want to do. And then on Fridays, we also have clubs. So there's like a board games club, or there's a Kurtamen club. There's like a sports discussion club. I think there's a book club. There's a whole bunch of different clubs, but there's enough time for during the day. You can get your homework done. You have enough breaks. It's generally, you don't get overwhelmed with work over the day, so it's just pretty easy to get through the day.
Yeah, our general approach is that we don't want more than 2 academic classes in a row without a break. That we want the flow to feel. So we start every day with morning advisory for 20 minutes. As I touched on, there are 2 classes in the morning, and then we have a mid-morning break, which Loke mentioned. And I will say, I love all aspects of the building inside, but my favorite aspect of the building is that we have the turf field when we step out the back door. So we have this giant terrace, and we're on the turf field, and so we get our kids outside as often as possible, so they can go outside to the turf field or the playground. They come in, have one more class, and then as Alok and Thomas also mentioned, we have lunch with an advisory study hall that's sort of a quasi extra help period. So teachers are available. And then we have another class or two in the afternoon before a small break, and then athletics. So we do try to, we think that for our students to be able to be on and engage in the classes, we have to make sure that we kind of balance their need for movement and breaks. Thomas, you want to add?
Yeah, there are also a bunch. Well, all those times are pretty flexible. So if you need to meet with the teacher, then you can. But there are also a bunch of spaces around the building for you to work with friends, because obviously you're not going to have classes with just your advisory. They take students from all the other advisories. So there are 2 common areas and where a bunch of classes are, and then there's one still inside but near where the playground is. And those are really great to meet with friends and work on projects together. Or if your advisor says it's okay, you can always work in your advisory room.
Yeah. And there's one, I'll answer a quick one on, there was homework was briefly addressed as manageable. What's typical expected amount? So generally our students report an average of an hour and a half hours per night, an hour and a half hours, an hour and a half spent on homework per night. And again, it does vary by student, and some of it depends on what their class load is, because students can take a study hall as an elective class. And sometimes we find, especially at this period, a family will report, or a student will report, they're spending a lot more time than that. And those are times where I and the teachers get involved. We don't want students spending a ton of time on homework, because if they're spending a lot of time on homework, then they're not being creative, and they're not having balance, and they're not. So some of that is involved in, helping them maybe work smarter. Sometimes they find that they're getting stuck and spinning their wheels. And so we advise them on how to, here's where you're going to stop. You're going to email a teacher saying, I got stuck here. I'm going to come see you tomorrow then, and we'll go over it. So helping students and parents kind of manage that. It took till 7:04 for the first dress code question. So thank you for that, for staying strong. And I will give you a quick response. I'm only joking, because it's a universal important question at every independent school, and I get it. I've been doing this for a long time. So I don't have a short answer for you. The longer answer is that we, part of being a unit school is making sure that our progression in every way kind of makes sense. And our lower school has a kind of uniform up through 6th grade with a Flint Hill top and different choices for bottoms. In upper school, there were some bigger changes this year. And what happens with upper school dress code next year will likely influence where we kind of land. So we've also had to adjust our things in the past couple of years. So this year we weren't sure if we were going to be able to use the locker rooms. So we didn't know if we were going to be able to have all of our students go into the locker room and gather in there and get changed for athletics. So we had to design dress guidelines that allowed students to transition from the day to the athletic field. So our students have been able to wear athletic gear. So they a Flint Hill top and Flint Hill bottoms, or gray or blue sweats. And I don't think kids need to wear sweatpants during the day, but for this year, it was a solution to our issue of being able to change for athletics. Moving forward, again, some of it depends on where the upper and lower school land, and we'll make a decision on that. Our hope is for our students to be comfortable. We're also mindful of what our families are investing in clothing, and we also want it to not be the focus of our program. because it shouldn't be. Okay. And okay, so I want to thank Kathleen and Loke and Thomas for their time tonight and their great input, and hopefully gave all of you a sense of what the student experience is like. Again, our hope is that all prospective students will come and shadow for a day and be able to visit classes and get a real sense of what our middle school looks and feels like. So I thank you, Alok, Thomas, Kathleen, and you can hop on out and head back to solving the world's problems and doing good things and not gaming too much. Deal? Thank you very much. And we also have 3 current parents who are here giving of their time, which we greatly appreciate. So maybe to get this piece started, if you could introduce yourself, how long your child has been here, maybe something weird about yourself you never told anybody. That's optional. And Mike, I really don't want to hear it. So yeah, just and maybe what brought you to Flint Hill, or what keeps you here, and then we'll let the prospective families' questions kind of drive things from there. Okay, Mike, do you want to get started?
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike McClements. I have a daughter who's currently in the 8th grade, and she started in kindergarten or junior kindergarten, and I have a son who graduated in 2018. So this makes up our family's 17th year at Flint Hill. And Brian, I have no secrets with you, so you always tell me I talk too much, so yes. You know everything. So when we first selected Flint Hill way back in junior kindergarten, you're looking at such a young person, you don't know what their interests are going to be. And for us, we felt that Flint Hill was equipped, that whatever interests he would develop as the years went on, they were equipped to handle it, whether it was something in the arts or something in athletics. And all these years later, I still feel that was a great decision, because they've never let us down in that regard. There's always something for them to try and maybe just push themselves a little farther. So that's why we selected it anyway. So.
Thank you. Paula?
Hi, sorry, I'm Paula Curl, and my daughter Jane is in her first year this year at Flint Hill. She's in 7th grade. She came from our local public school.
And what brought you here?
She really wanted a smaller environment, especially after being in virtual school because of COVID. She was pretty terrified to be thrown into a 1,200 person middle school, which is what she would have done. And so she's really come out of her shell a lot just this past couple of months at Flint Hill.
Great. And Nikita?
Hi, I'm Nikita Sheth. My daughter is in 8th grade, Lara. We actually moved, we've been at Flint Hill for 2 years. We moved from abroad, so just came to the area a couple of years back. What specifically drew us to Flint Hill was just the variety of offerings they had in terms of academic, the clubs, the sports, something that she didn't necessarily have access to where we were previously, but also just the attention, individualized attention. And by that, I mean, not just, in terms of academically, but also I always, from the beginning, felt very comfortable having a touch point with her advisor, or if there was anyone else I wanted to speak with about how she was progressing. I was always very welcome to chat and meet with various people with respect to my daughter.
Thank you. So I know there's some questions queued up. Why don't we start with, this is a question about students being oriented and welcomed into Flint Hill during the first few weeks. I wonder if we could kind of touch on that from both the student and the parent standpoint about I guess particularly for Paula and Nikita about transitioning your kids transitioning into Flint Hill, and about what did that kind of orientation and welcoming process look like, and how did it look and feel like for you as families?
I think our experience may have been different because of COVID. Sadly, there was really no orientation for Jane before the first day of school, which she did find hard. I will admit that. But the advisors were great in really helping her to try to branch out and talk to people and meet people. So that was helpful for her.
I would say, I would mirror what Paula said, because we started, 2 years back when the situation was a little different. Although she was going to in-person school, there wasn't an opportunity necessarily to meet before that happened. But I will tell you, she came back from the very first day already talking about some of her fellow classmates, and she really took to the environment. And not having been to any school in the US before, it was just she was extremely welcomed and felt very comfortable.
I think the only thing that I could add to that is, obviously there were some differences over the last 2 years because of the pandemic. But what the school typically has done for that first week of school is it's geared more towards social growth. It's not very academic oriented. They're not really hammering the books, but they're kind of getting to know the routine. They're getting to know, where things are if they're in a new building, and they're getting to know their classmates. And I think the curriculum is kind of designed with that in mind, to provide opportunities for them to meet. Brian, I'm sure you could talk about some of the specifics of that, but that's always been my impression of, at least, generally about the first week of school.
Yeah, and we've often in the past, and again, we find that we have to do it different ways each year in order to keep it fresh. And in most years, we do have some touch point opportunities over the summer, both for families and for kids. So we can, when we have the ability to arrange gatherings on campus, or kind of informal things, those are especially for those who really benefit from that. Some kids are ready to roll up on day one and just have it happen from there, and some really need to get a toe in the social water first. So we typically have some of those opportunities, and then, as Mike mentioned, we do from the very beginning, especially the first week, the first 3 days, it's very advisory group focused. So we start with that. We spend most of the time in that group of 10 to 12 students, kind of connecting and kind of exploring, getting to know each other within that small group, and then having opportunities to engage in broader groups. We run where they get a chance to kind of meet their classes and their schedules, but we don't really, as Mike said, we don't focus on the academic piece really until the second week, where the first part is getting used to, well, is very social, is a sense of connecting and belonging and feeling included, and figuring out how structures and systems work before getting into things. I mean, that's a big part of our approach to middle school overall, which is why we start our day with a 20-minute advisory program rather than jumping right into an academic class, is because we know we need to kind of prep the engines and feed their social and belonging needs in order to be ready for academic learning. So that's happens on a daily basis, and certainly is a focus early in the year.
I'll just jump in if I might. And during a typical year, we'll also have socials throughout the summer where we'll, for parents and for students. In the last couple of years, we've tried to do it virtually, which doesn't work near as well for those social connections, especially for new students. But we're really hopeful to soon be getting back to some of those, before orientation, before school starting, opportunities to socially connect students and parents with each other, so they come into the school year having some familiar faces.
Okay, other questions for these current parents who are real live people? Well, so I'll ask, maybe I'll ask a similar, well, you can take whichever one of these you want. I asked what brought you here, so maybe what keeps you here, when you could answer. And then similar to what we asked students is, what do you find to be, different or that you appreciate compared to your prior experience, or just something you appreciate in general that might be particularly relevant to someone who's trying to figure out what to do with their child next year and whether this is the right fit?
Listen, I can tell you that it's been so long since we selected. I don't have a lot of things to compare it to, really, but what I am thankful for is Flint Hill's ability to have such a personal relationship with the students, that the teachers, they know a student's learning style. And instead of trying to, bend the student to fit a certain style or, way in the classroom, they'll work with the student. And, if they're a visual learner, they'll make sure that all the material was presented in a way that, the student could retain that information easily. And that's what I'm most appreciative, because I see examples of it every day in every subject that, it's, maybe somebody thinks it's an unconventional way to do, to structure a paper or do a math problem. But if that if it helps the students, the teachers, they make sure that they meet the student. They meet the student wherever they're at. And, all these years, that's the thing that always has stood out to me. And then, you might say, well, that's what you get when you have small class sizes, but it's just hard to put a value on that, at least for our family.
And I would just make it clear, Mike didn't sign a 17-year contract. So that, we do, as much as our hope is that families come in early and continue at Flint Hill, we don't take that for granted. We're all on 1-year contracts, and our responsibility is to demonstrate the value of Flint Hill every day, and of staying as part of our community. Paul or Nikita, anything to add or take in a different direction?
I would say that my daughter really values the small class size and the chance that she has to really personally connect with all of her teachers. She's the oldest kid. She's a kid who really values adult relationships, and she frequently will go to teachers between classes, after classes, to clarify something, and sometimes just to hang out. So she's really enjoyed getting to know the teachers.
Thank you.
I think one thing I would add is that I've really appreciated is, two things. One is, the individualized relationships that the teachers have. Even at the first conference of our very first year, just a couple of months into school, I could feel that the teachers really understood who she was as a person, as a learner. And that was exciting for me and really gratifying. The second thing I will say is, now that it's her second year, I think Flint Hill does an excellent job amping up the rigor a little bit to prepare them for, the coming high school years. And it's in a way which is supportive, but also sets, good expectations, and, works with them to, move towards those expectations. And so I've been really happy with that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think an area that, that I've had the benefit of having a senior, graduate and is now a senior in college. And I think what they did for my son was he's so comfortable speaking with adults. And I think that started way back in, middle school at Flint Hill, because, they taught him to be an advocate for himself. And that just pays dividends over and over again. And I think that's one of the things that, when he got to college, he wasn't intimidated to go seek out a professor. And I think many of his peers, they were kind of reluctant, for reasons I'm not sure of. But anyway, I think it starts early, and I think that's it made a huge difference, at least for my son's, even his college experience. So I think, Nikita, you kind of mentioned it, that the teachers, or somebody mentioned that, that they're always available. And
well, I think it's a great summary of the kind of intent that needs to be there at every step along the way. And a lot of whether it's a seemingly and hopefully it's a fun learning activity, but everything happening, is with a purpose. And Mike, I'm glad you mentioned the advocacy piece, and you heard the students reference the advisory study hall and being able to connect for extra help. That's a really, carving out that time in our schedule and teaching kids how to ask for help is a critically important skill that, we all use every day, of course, as adults. But to Mike's point, and it's hard in middle school. It's hard to and students are in different places, and some of them feel like, well, if I say I don't get it, then they'll be mad at me, or I don't know what I don't know, so I don't even know where to start, or I don't. And so it takes a lot of gentle coaching and nudging, and sometimes dragging, and really, and talking through. All right, well, let's talk through what question you're going to ask. It was just one question, let's start from there. But we do talk about, we want our kids, as they move forward, to be the ones at the college level who, when they have a class with 500 kids, are the ones who are going to go visit a professor during office hours, because they've developed that skill of how to advocate for themselves, how to ask direct questions, and understand that the adults around them are helpful to them, and they want to be helpful. So I appreciate you making that point. Okay, well, I want to thank the three of you also for your very personal stories, and for sharing with families whose seats you've been in at some point in time. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to help support them and us as well. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer, who's already presenting, so she's ready to go. But Paul and Nikita and Mike, thank you for your contributions as always, and for your help. It was really helpful.
You're welcome, yes. Brian. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Brian. So at this point, we'll talk about some steps to learn more about Flint Hill and the admission process at Flint Hill. So I know we have a mixed group here. Some of you have already started the application, and you're well on your way through the admission process. You might even have a completed application. And trust me, I won't be offended if you decide to end your evening with us here. But of course, welcome you to stay, and you'll also hear about some other upcoming opportunities to learn more about Flint Hill. And for those of you that haven't yet applied, we'll walk through the admission process and steps. So before we dive into the details, a little bit about what the admission process is like here at Flint Hill is we really aim for it to be low pressure, low stress. It's about us getting to know each other. It should be a really fun exploration for both of us as we move through the process together. And some families will, of course, start to feel some pressure about like whether their child's going to be admitted. And just rest assured that if Flint Hill is the place for your child, they'll be admitted. And that is what the admission process is all about, is keeping the mission of Flint Hill and your child in the center of all that we do, so that we're making the very best decision together for your family. And in terms of what is required to apply, so of course, the first step is the application. The link is on the top there. There is also a link to apply on almost every web page on our website. So you click there, you'll start a Husky Hub account, is the name of our system, and you'll submit the application form. The form itself takes 15, maybe 20 minutes at most to complete. And you don't need all of these other things on the list to submit the application. So the best first step is to go ahead and submit that application form. And that puts you on our radar as an applicant. And we begin working very closely with you to make sure there aren't any blind spots in the process, and to be sure that we can get your application complete on time. And we'll talk a little more about the timeline next. The other supporting documents that are required to complete the admission process are official transcripts and progress reports, recommendations, one from a math teacher, one from an English teacher. Once you submit that application form, and that form is processed, you're given access to a checklist, which is in that Husky Hub account with that same login, where it actively shows you what we've received and what we've yet to receive. Within that checklist, you put the recommenders' names and email addresses, and our system pings out those recommendation requests directly to the recommenders, and you're able to add a note. There is also a questionnaire, 2 questionnaires required, one completed by the parent, one completed by the student, a graded writing sample, and then at Flint Hill, the SSAT is optional. So if the academic record and the student profile is pretty straightforward, a lot of times we don't need the SSAT test. If it's been a little less consistent, then the SSAT might be a great data point, or if there might be limited records for a variety of reasons. So when in doubt about whether to have take that test or submit it, you can speak with your admission officer, Jordy or Justin, and they'll certainly help guide you in that decision-making process. And then there's also a parent and a student interview required at the middle schools. So you can register for that as soon as you have access to that checklist. There's a link to set up that interview, and that can be done virtually or on our campus. In terms of when to apply, there's no time like the present. Our application deadline is approaching. It is next week, the end of next week, next Friday. But that's okay for those of you that haven't got started. There is still time for you to submit the application form. Like I said, that takes 15 minutes. You could do that tonight after this, or over the next couple of days. And then Jordy or Justin will work really closely with you to make sure that we get all of those other things in and those steps complete. And if you end up scheduling the interview a day or 2 or 4 after the 21st, because your schedules do tend to fill up, we can make that work and be a little bit flexible there. For those interested in applying for financial aid, that deadline is the 25th, just a few days after the admission application. The financial aid application is pretty extensive, so you would want to get started and just poke into that and see what's required pretty soon as well. And a link to that is on our tuition and financial aid webpage. After those deadlines, you'll hear back from us on February 4th about an admission decision. You'll have a couple weeks to decide, during which we'll have some revisit event opportunities for you. And then hopefully you submit your contract, and in April we celebrate that we found each other and we start this beautiful partnership together. We will have some information nights in May for parents, just to learn more about the transition. And then, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we'll have those social opportunities, the summer socials. So in terms of what to do next, you are at an event, so congratulations. That's a beautiful, beautiful step in the process. We have another event, a parent to parent. So administrators, team members, staff members won't be there. It'll just be you with current middle school and upper school parents in a virtual format, asking questions and having a dialogue. And if you don't have questions, you can still show up and hear other people's questions and the answers from our current parents at that event on January 25th. So the registration is open on our website, on the events website, which is under the admission visit campus tab on our main website. You will see other event recordings. There's some topical ones all about curiosity. We have a whole event focused on that. And there's some others in there. So you can watch any of the previous ones or register for one of the future ones. We are offering campus tours. If you haven't seen our gorgeous new middle school facility yet, I encourage you to go to www.flinthill.org/admission-team, which is listed there on your screen. And at that link, you'll see Jordy and Justin's picture. Hopefully, if you've heard from one of them will be your officer, and you can schedule a virtual meeting with them, a phone consultation with them if you have some questions, and the tour, as I mentioned, if you'd like to come to campus. As Meredith mentioned earlier, social media is a fantastic way to see inside of our classrooms and to see what our students are up to, see what our faculty members are up to. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo, those are all linked at the bottom of our homepage. So I hope that you'll start following us on some of them, and really another opportunity to see inside of our walls. And that concludes the admission presentation. I am glad to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to chat if you have any questions about admissions or next steps or scheduling appointments or anything else that we can help you with this evening. Pause for our vaccinations required for parents and prospective prospects on campus. And so, yes, in order to keep our community safe, of course, the most important thing to us is keeping our students safe and to keep school going, which is to keep the COVID rates down as much as possible. So for that reason, for parents and prospective students visiting campus, they are required to show vaccination proof. If a family cannot be vaccinated, or a member of the family for some reason, you can certainly reach out to our admission team. Another opportunity is also to schedule something after hours when we don't have current students on campus. Any other questions we can answer tonight? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, I don't see any others, so it sounds like we've answered all your questions, which is mission accomplished for us, because that's what tonight was all about. And we are so thankful for your time this evening to come learn more about Flint Hill. And we are very excited about continuing the conversation. We hope that you are too. You know how to reach us. We'll also send you an email tomorrow morning with a recording of this event in case you missed any of it or want to go back. We'll also have some links to the application and some other things that we've talked about today for easy access in your inbox tomorrow. Yes, Brian keeps us all laughing all the time. So thank you for sharing that. That's pretty common on our campus here. All right. Well, I hope all of you have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great night. Bye-bye.